Unpopular opinion, but
Unpopular opinion. Unpopular opinion. Unpopular opinion.
You're listening to Unpopular Opinion, a podcast for professionals from all walks of life who want to hear success stories from innovators who've won by taking the path less traveled. In each episode, recovering journalist and content marketer Ashley Amber Saba interviews individuals who have prospered thanks to their genuinely unpopular opinions, despite warnings from naysayers, threats to their careers, and colossal obstacles. All rebels are welcome.
Welcome to Unpopular Opinion. I'm your host, Ashley Saba, and this episode is brought to you by my friends at Audience Ops. Audience Ops is a done-for-you, content-led growth agency that offers blog posts, content strategy, and full-service podcast production for professionals looking to launch a podcast like this one. Today, I'm joined by Pete DeOlympio, the Director of Marketing at Clear Intelligence. Pete, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you. Happy to be here. This is cool.
Yeah, I know you're not very big on marketing podcasts in general, so.
No, I mean, that's probably lead with my big unpopular opinions. I don't listen to these. I really don't. And I know they're hard to do and a lot of work goes into them, but yeah, I don't know. I think I'm a little maybe atypical in that sense. I just I like to focus on work and I love marketing. I was a marketing person my whole career, but I need a break sometimes. So this is a cool angle. I'm excited to see where you go with this. And I saw part of your first published talk the other day with the other Ashley, and it was really cool. So
two Ashleys in a pod.
Maybe there's hope for me.
Well, hey, I'm honored and flattered that number one, that you would even pay attention to my podcast and that you would wanted to go on as a guest. So thank you.
Yeah, no, it's cool.
Yeah. Just to kick things off, you have what I think is cool, a unique perspective that there's too much annoying advice on LinkedIn and on Twitter regarding like workplace and personal direction. And you don't think the majority of people are actually going to these platforms to get that advice anyway. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, I don't know if it's the advice is probably well-intentioned. It's probably not annoying advice, but I think it's unsolicited, I'm kind of wondering where the demand is for it. Because in my experience, I'm not like firing up LinkedIn like, I can't get my why is AdWords broken or why is my analytics down? I'm not like, it's never functional. I'm just like, well, I wonder what people are talking about. Like, I approach it conversationally. I think I approach everything kind of that way. But yeah, it's everyone. I mean, you can go on Twitter and find so many people like, here's how I did something in 27 steps or 30 steps. I'm like, what? Like, who is that for? Like, I just don't understand. So yeah, I don't understand that side of it. But I think that there's a lot of people out there that are doing it their own way and having a unique voice, and I think that's interesting. It's not all that it's all bad, but it's I think there are other ways to show, I don't know if it's thought leadership, whatever it is, but you can have your own point of view on things that aren't just like, here's how to set up your LinkedIn ads. I'm like, no, that's cool. That's helpful probably, but I'm not looking for it here. I don't know.
I think that is an intent issue too, because we think that people are going onto LinkedIn looking for that. Maybe, I mean, not everybody, but people who do that, maybe they think that is why people are opening it up. And like most of us, I know me, I'm not going onto LinkedIn for that usually. And if I ever am going onto LinkedIn to that, I'm not looking for it in my feed. I'm asking people that I know can help me,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, I mean, it's like, there's like a hierarchy. Like, I'm going to Google it first because I'm like, that's what happens. If I don't find a good answer there, then it's like, the next level down is like the Ask Reddit thread or like the Stack Overflow or whatever. Like, you kind of have like those sort of resources. But yeah, and then it's like, well, who do I know that can help me with this?
Exactly.
I sort of start, that's sort of how I always approach it. I'm going to like, if I can't just find the answer and sort of deduce what I'm looking for, I'm going to go and ask a specific question. But like, and the other thing that I think is really ignored on LinkedIn, it's like everyone is doing really different things. Like, sure, there's a million software companies and that's like a big part of the LinkedIn ecosystem, and that's fine. But like, even those companies have like very different challenges. I don't think there's like a catch-all answer for anything. Like, and it's a little bit naive to think that you're going to find one. Because I mean, I've never looked at something and then been like, I've neither been like, wow, I'm going to do that verbatim, Like I'm always gonna like put my own like, spin on something. But there's always gonna be little nuances where you're like, well, this is a start, but I don't like there's a it's not alignment in maybe it's targeting or if it's healthcare, maybe there's other regulations or stuff you need to consider. There's always those little nuances that I think kind of really steer more, they're much more directional than I think people want to give credit for.
Yeah. And then there's also the assumption that the way that you're explaining it to people is going to be the only way it's going to be functional for them. And a lot of the times, maybe they are a content marketer. Like I'm using that as an example because of me, but like maybe they're a content marketer like you, and maybe they're in tech like you, but the thing that you're introducing might not be applicable to them in any way. And it might not be effective.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's a fine, like, I'm sure there's a lot of good advice on there, and people are, you got to bring something to the table. You can't just be like, my kid was loud this morning. Like, it's funny in small doses, and I'll do stuff like that. But I don't know. I think that there's so many other perspectives, and when I'm on LinkedIn, like, it's about like personal connection more than anything. Like, it's not a functional exercise for me.
Yeah, I'm doing it for fun more than anything. Entertainment.
Yeah, totally. And that should be fine, right? Like, I don't think everything needs to be like, like trying to get your seed money raised for your round one. I'm like, I don't care that much. I'm like, I'm not looking to take over the world here.
I have never fully consumed any post talking about that, FYI. Like, no. I'm just tuning it out and going down.
Yeah, I don't care.
Yeah, you have to be an employee in the company, and even then, you're kind of like, I mean, how unique and entertaining can you make that in the end?
Oh, it's so hard. I mean, that's like kind of what got me even thinking about like how I wanted to approach it was like, my background is in events and and really scientific events, not like, so like you're not going to walk in off the street to anything that this company was doing. You had to have like a PhD in biochemistry or whatever it might be. So you can't exactly like opine in that space. Like, one, like, I'm the marketing guy and it's obvious that I don't know, and like I'm unqualified to talk about that. And so it was such a challenge. Like, how do I provide content that's not just a web banner with a link to say like, you can save a couple $100 if you register soon? It's like, yeah, that's great, that's a nice offer, I guess, but like, I don't know. That's not what it's for. Like, that's not what LinkedIn is meant for, I don't think, or that's not how I see social selling being effective. And so I started being like, well, how do we put some personality on this? How do we drive engagement through our staff? Because I mean, I'm almost everywhere I've worked, I've always seen people be like, why aren't you the person that's like the face of this? Like, I understand we need like subject matter experts and thought leaders and stuff like that, but like, even like conference producers and that past experience, they have a point of view on it too that I think is interesting, and people shy away from that. They're like, well, this is the product and I'm separate from the product. I'm like, I don't know if I don't know. But yeah, so that got me just thinking of other ways, like, how do we go about this? And I actually pitched a podcast a million years ago in the life science space. I was like, okay, here's how we do this. Like, we're in the biotech, pharmaceuticals. We want to have some content out there. We've been releasing these like 6-minute podcasts where it's like, here's a guy that's speaking at the event. Here's 2 questions, and then he's going to say, come to the event and see me. And like, that is an audio recording like that. That it shares that with a podcast, but that's not what a podcast is. Like, even 10 years ago, that's not what a podcast was. So I was like, here's what we do. Like, we're going to get some people that know what they're talking about, and then you're going to explain it like I'm an idiot.
And like I'm 10? Or
yeah,
how they tell you?
It was basically like explain like I'm 5, and it's going to be with Pete and the smart person. I'm like, I can be like kind of the, you can use marketing here to sort of say like, here's like the line of business implications, and here's how you explain it to someone who doesn't have skin in the game, like technologically or, by their, profession. Because those have their, even in like a highly technical, like, bioprocess manufacturing is like a thing we did a lot in, like that. There's downstream implications for marketing. Like, marketing could know more about that, but they don't, because it's all PhDs. and I love the idea of it being kind of funny. Like I could be the butt of the joke. Like I think that's interesting. And I think internally there was some buy-in, it's like, oh, well, that's kind of a cool idea and that might be funny, but like, you get into that thing that I think that Ashley on your previous show mentioned, like what is the business value? Like if we don't have an immediate ROI or whatever the KPI is that you're going for, like, is this a waste or do we need to do this? Like you need to like try to do it before you decide it's a bad idea. And we could just never get that. Like,
well, if nobody ever did things that they might be a bad,
or whatever. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, but if nobody ever did things that we thought were maybe a bad idea, then we wouldn't have anything new ever. It would just be existing everything.
Yeah. And so I thought it was a funny idea, but it's just like, oh, we got to get people to do this. And that's a much bigger lift. And I'm like, yeah, it is a bigger lift, but we don't really have, like, if you want to get into that media landscape, it's gonna be harder. But yeah, I don't know. That was sort of, I've made the attempt before. It typically falls on dead ears, but.
Can you kind of catch me up? I know you mentioned a couple of jobs that you've had on this like event, sure. And now you're a director of marketing, kind of how you've used your perspective on things like this in the jobs that you've had.
Yeah. So when, in the events space, I think we did it a little bit, the podcast thing didn't work out, but we did some fun stuff. There's definitely no lack of personality at that organization. There was some of that. But to make it a marketable thing was harder. You can do stuff at an event that's really fun, but it's hard to do a fun thing that gets someone to go to an event. But we did that. I was basically a digital marketer at that time, direct marketing. We did a lot of print. We did a lot of the online stuff, obviously. But yeah, and I was the intern in college. By the time I had worked there for 5 years, I had known people there for like a large portion of my life. Like people were at my wedding and know my kids and stuff. Like I grew up at that organization. And so by the time, COVID and everything came around, and an event company is going to have a tough time in a pandemic,
Yeah, definitely.
And so I was like, I'm really kind of spinning my tires here, professionally and even like personally. Like I kind of just was like, I think there's probably more that I can do. And, I was more afraid that I would look back and regret having not tried to do something than I was going to be if it didn't work. And it took me a ton of time to get there to where I thought that like that was a trade-off you can make. And it's made harder when you have a family and small kids. My kids are young. They're they're barely in grade school. So I think the pandemic was an opportunity to be like, why don't you go for it?
Take the leap.
Yeah. And it started by sort of saying like, well, how do I start building a network? How do I position myself in a way that it's not like, I can't say that I'm shopping for a job. I certainly don't want to do it that way. But it started with just little posts that were just about like what I was doing or growing professionally. Like I remember one of my first ones I ever did was about like, I was working with a media partner and I wrote this big proposal in an email and all this stuff. And I signed it, instead of best and then my name, I signed it Beast. And hit send, and it went out and I was like, well, that's a post, there's some content there. And no one cares. The end result is people don't notice the things that aren't about them for the most part. Everyone's their own main character, and I think that's sort of been a theme, for me. You can go out there, you can kind of be yourself, and if it doesn't work, then like the worst thing that's going to happen is no one's going to notice.
The human content is the good content, though. Like you can get technical if you want to, but if you're doing that every day, it's going to be a little bit more tough for people to enjoy what you're doing consistently. I don't want to talk about, I've had people actually tell me I should talk more about marketing and content, and I shouldn't talk as much about funny things that are happening in my life, but I'm not going to do that because I'm not going to be motivated to show up and publish every day then.
It's so tedious.
Yeah, I don't want to do that every day. And I like my fight back to people has been, if I'm a content marketer, then anything I do is content. Okay.
Right. Yeah, that's such a, like, I know this is like getting really kind of pedantic, but even like like, I agree that content creator is better than influencer, which is just gross and like we need to like banish forever. But like
Oh yeah.
content, like what does that possibly mean? Like, how did we
Content has
settle on the
changed
word like,
definition a lot.
yeah, it's just like, yeah, I create words. I'm like, I'm at a total loss. Like, what is
It's like you
content?
didn't
What is
create
it?
words, they were already created.
Yeah, like I'm at a total loss for what that's supposed to be. And people are like, and it wouldn't be a big deal if people weren't like, well, that's not productive content. I'm like, maybe not. I don't know. Maybe that's, there's more than one way to go about it. And I think if I have some sort of larger purpose for this, I've sort of started to bang the drum for it a little bit, but like, I think that at the end of the day, if you're forgetting that there's people on the other side of it, and now most of the world is remote and all this stuff, like, I think there is a vacuum there of people that are, maybe they don't miss driving into work and sitting and listening to like their annoying coworker chew on peanuts all day or whatever it might be. There's a lot of things we don't miss.
People who need to put extra deodorant on, maybe.
Yeah, for real. That's wow. I have seen some stuff.
I had I'm not going to name too specifically here, but I've worked with somebody that it was back when we had our own offices, and I could hear them cutting their nails through the door, and it was just absolutely like, it happened every month, and I couldn't like hang with that. It was just the most awful noise to me.
Yeah, that's pretty rough.
It's like, can't you do that at home? Like, what's happening in your home life that you
literally any other place would be fine. Go out in your car for 5 minutes,
Yeah, like, ugh.
But yeah, I think people do like, I do think there's that like interpersonal thing that there's a little bit of a vacuum around, and I don't know, it's just not hard to bring that into like your content, if you want to call it that.
I like how when we were talking, you mentioned you called, I think you deemed this a hilariously crappy metaverse trade show. And
for real, yeah.
Explain that more, because I love it.
Yeah, so it's just like so coming from events, and we put on trade shows, and you walk into the exhibit hall, and like, I am blown away that vendors will do this still, because like they know that every person that walks in is dreading you coming up to them. Like, you're going to come up, like, as soon as people start walking into the hall, you're going to be like, hey, did you hear about my organization? And you're like, oh, just kill me. Like, just kill me. This is awful. And business gets done that way, like, remarkably. And field marketing is like a valuable thing. I don't know how they do it. Like, hats off to them. But it got me thinking of that. And like, I don't want to go on LinkedIn and just be like, web banner, everything's a booth. Like, oh, you have this, that's cool. That's a cool thing. And you have that. Most of those deals probably happen at the bar at a trade show. They're not happening at the booth. And I think that sort of, encapsulates a little bit, like, just be a person, man. Like, it's that easy. I think that, yeah, like, you're going to have to show business value, and your product has to be worth something at the end of the day. But that's like obvious. Like, that's like that, like, of course that also needs to be true. But if you're only doing that, like, that lets if your competitor has a little bit of personality, or has some skin in the game professionally and personally, I think that they're going to eke you out. I think if they know that Jeff has like totally buttoned up in 3-piece suit and looks awesome and has all the talking points nailed, but is just kind of cold, I think that you might not necessarily go there. Obviously it depends on what we're talking about, but I don't know. And I probably project my own experience a lot, but like, all things being equal, I'm probably going to go with the person that I think is a regular person.
I think they come up as more authentic too.
Yeah.
We don't want to be with the people posing. We want to be with the people who are, open and transparent, and you don't feel like they're putting on a show. Yeah.
And it's just like, even at the best case scenario, like, no one's going to be for everybody. Like, that doesn't exist. You can't like be everything to everyone. So I'd rather have like a smaller audience of people that like are on my wavelength, than a bigger one it's like transactional. I'm just kind of not super interested, and that's sort of not a great like business perspective. You know what I mean? Like, that's not going to like motivate shareholders. I get that, but just also not what I'm trying to accomplish.
You mentioned another funny thing that I want to talk about here, that if everybody acted as they do on LinkedIn at a dinner party, you'd expect them to be on a Netflix serial killer documentary. Can you
Right?
elaborate?
Yeah, it's the same thing. It's sort of the same shitty metaverse reality. It's sort of the same idea. Um, that's just not how people interact. Like if have you ever been like at a barbecue with like work guy? It's like, hey man, like
Uh-huh.
your spouses know each other, and you're like, oh yeah, I'm Pete. Nice to meet you. And they're like, oh, so what do you do? And then they talk for half an hour, and you're like, oh my God, like I was being polite, Um, no one acts like that, or like that's a person that I'm now escaping from. That's one of those like, oh, I think my kid fell down. He's very sensitive. I got to go over there and deal with that. Anything. Oh, I left my keys in my car. Then you're beeping it on your way over there. Yeah, it's just a weird. That's like LinkedIn, right? Everyone's always on, and it's just like that's not someone I want to hang out with. I don't really want to do that. It's just like I don't know. It's sort of funny though too. Like you can give people enough rope to hang themselves with a little bit. Like what I used to do, it was more so in my 20s, honestly, when people are coming up and I think they want to prove that they're doing something and all of that, and I get it. But I'd be at the cookout or whatever, hanging out and be like, oh, you do that, you do all that? Like, wow, that's fascinating. Like, tell me more about that. And they'll go on and like, oh, my staff is this many people. And, we're doing 10 million a year. And I'm like, wow, that's amazing. Good for you, man. And I'm always just like, that's fantastic. Like, tell me more about that. And without fail, they'll go on and on and on. They're like, so what do you do? And I'll be like, nah, nothing.
I just generally have to
totally
explain sometimes what marketing is to people that don't get it.
Maybe that's probably a defense mechanism, right? I'm just like, nah, don't worry about it. I don't do it. Like, yeah, I send out emails. I spam people. Don't worry. I'm no big deal.
My whole family was disappointed when I became a content marketer and shifted from journalism because it was cooler to tell people that I was a reporter than it was to tell them that I did a thing that they couldn't explain. And even to this day, I have asked them and they don't understand what I do.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And it's funny too. Cause like, I think a lot of people either think marketing is like, almost frivolous, right? They're like, oh, well, that's like nice to have or whatever. Like, oh yeah. Like, never mind that there's marketing on TV every 200 seconds. You're not going to get a whole lot of a show before you're seeing some marketing. But people really want to marginalize it, be like, oh, well, that's you work with a designer and they do your ads. Like, so what did you do? And I'm like, yeah, you're right. I bring very little to this equation. I think I suck too. That's fine.
We're all just bad for the ecosystem. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I don't get it. It's like, everyone can do it. And also it's worthless.
Yep.
I'm like, okay.
That's really anybody who does social media marketing, design. I mean, I think that's actually a good tie into the next question that I want to talk to you about. And you posted about it on LinkedIn too, after we talked about it, but you think that marketers generally need to apologize to graphic designers for what we put them through. Why should all marketers be doing this today?
Yeah. So I think it sort of goes to what I was saying, where like people not in a marketing role don't value it. I think sometimes people in a marketing role fall into this trap where their support, whether it's like your service departments, like they're not doing anything, but they're a huge part of the ecosystem for any business, right? And so I've had so many just awful, excruciating like design meetings with like the product person and me and maybe a sales rep and the designer is just getting hammered with not only nonsensical interconnected ideas that they could never use, but then they're like, so can you give me some response in real time? Like just these completely unrealistic expectations of this poor design person who is usually like pretty junior level. They're not quite at that design director level yet. They're coming up in their career. It's just like, and the things that they get asked for just for marketing specifically, just like, can you make the logo bigger? Obviously, asking for just like incomprehensible stuff. Like I had this one situation where the notes I got back were it didn't convey movement. This was a banner ad that did not move. And so like So like swishy lines, like can we just say like you can't say someone like make it whimsical, period. Like you have to like I think that's sort of like a marketing function, right? You need to be able to communicate
Oh
something
man.
abstract,
The things we put
tangibly.
them through, though. I mean,
Yeah.
the other thing is they have a lot of discussions with people not in the marketing department because everybody feels like they're kind of like the whipping boy for the company. And
Yeah.
then they're getting one communication from a team member that is directly conflicting with another communication. And
Totally.
a lot of them don't have anything to do with like strategy. They're just preference. They don't have
Oh my God.
anything to do
So
with anything
much.
but that. I have heard about a story about it was a design candidate, and I think I shared it on LinkedIn a few months ago, and it was an anonymous hiring horror story. And she gave a copy of her portfolio, like you do,
Yeah.
for the interview, the hiring manager, and he went through it and he asked her why she picked the color red for
Ugh.
this design. And she was like, that was the company's brand color. And he goes, you should have thought to change that. Like that was his feedback to her in the interview. Like, why do we do that?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's painful. And especially when like huge companies have a brand kit where they're like, these are the rules. And if you deviate from them, like it's only going to make your life harder.
Yeah.
Like you should have thought to change I'm going to take down the VP of marketing on
Yeah.
this web banner that no one's going to see, or
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, no, they have we just like, and even it's just like the little things too, like even like the best designer in the world. Like I've had some that I've loved to work with where they're awesome and I don't have to like, there's not a big back and forth, like we get each other. But I'll be like, hey, something changed here. Can you change this tagline? Oh, I spelt it wrong. I'm sorry. Like this is like 25 emails now by the end of the week. Like apologize to your designer. Like they're not your therapist. Like please stop abusing these people.
I'm with you. Hey, shout out to Tan. I love you. Thank you for making my job easier. She
Right.
is our designer now, but I do feel like it's part of my mission to protect her from a lot of
Yeah.
things. People
No,
want to get in a
totally.
meeting to go through a thing with her, and I'm like, please no. She doesn't like, if you have comments, please just give them to me and I will
Filter.
deliver them. She
Yeah,
doesn't need your
totally.
feedback from 20 people. Like it's just not
Yeah.
helpful. Too many
No,
cooks
it's
in the
not.
kitchen.
No, it's awful. It is. And they have a heart. Like people think like, and I guess it's really discouraging for me because like marketing is often thought of as like kind of frivolous and like soft and and then we're gonna do that to design people. Like, come on. Like I've had the like, so what do you actually do conversations, and now you're gonna make it sound like this work that they're spending a ton of time on is like somehow easy. Like it's not. It's
No.
wicked hard. It's
Yeah,
insanely challenging.
I can barely function on Canva these days. Like I'm glad that we
No.
have people professionally doing what they do and that
Right.
I don't have to do it. Generally,
Yeah,
I've
even
been at
like
jobs where I
production
did have to do
design.
it, but I wasn't the
Yeah.
one who should have been doing it.
No, you can tell 100% if I designed something on LinkedIn. If I made the web banner and it looks like a child did it, that's because I did it.
Hey, I'm with you. I never got like, once I got out of college, I know I took like beginner and Adobe
Yeah.
Illustrator and InDesign and whatnot. I didn't do a lot more of that anymore. I was
No.
glad to be gone with it
No, for
generally.
sure. That's a
It's
weird
not
hang up.
everybody's
Like,
thing. And a lot of
no,
the times the people giving feedback, they don't actually have as good of a design eye as they think they do. And they're not
never.
giving designers enough credit.
No, they give them the credit. Like it's a skill set. And people want to be like, oh, they just like to draw. Like, no, it's a hard skill, you
Yeah,
know?
it's just
And
a
and I
lot
think it's
more.
it's also like an opportunity cost. Like I remember trying, because that's sort of like how I was taught. Like you go in, you tell them what you're working on, you tell them the objectives. Obviously there's like some brand guidelines going in. Uh, and it was very prescriptive. And I would do it, and you can do it that way. And as I got, further on in my career, I was just like, okay, we'd have like our first meeting with a designer, be like, I'm like the words ideas guy, and you make it look awesome. And I don't want any other design input than that.
That's what
Like,
I would like. If I was a designer, I would like that too. I know that they would appreciate that a lot more.
right.
It happens to social media people a lot too, is everybody in
Okay.
the company thinks they can do it. And then they all want to give ideas to them about how they should
Yeah.
have done it. It's like, just because you have a LinkedIn or a Facebook account doesn't mean that you should be doing this for a company. Like,
Right. Yeah.
yeah.
And every time I've approached it as as more of like a team mentality or as like a partnership, it's always ended up being better, like without fail.
Definitely.
So it's just like, yeah. And I don't know. I don't need that sort of level of control at all. Like I don't want it. It's not productive.
Mm-mm.
And it's just like every design team I've ever worked with, I've been like, okay, so I know marketers are brutal. I can't draw myself out of a paper bag. Like I need you to help me. Like I try to like flip the relationship a little bit, be like, pretend like I don't know anything about this. You're awesome at it. Like let's approach this in a way that's going to make us both look the best. And that's like a pretty low bar to get over, I think.
I like that.
And yet they're always like, oh wow, like I've never heard that before. I'm like, that is terrible.
Hey, if everybody out there is taking notes, we should be doing that.
Yeah, they know what they're doing. It's unbelievable that they're like, I don't know. I feel like we're peers more than we want to admit to sometimes, which is messed up because it's like marketing is better. Like get out of here. Like it's ridiculous.
Everybody thinks that what they do is the most important thing in the universe.
Yeah, I don't get it.
I like how you mentioned that about having authentic discourse and that you believe that marketing is not as important as marketers make it out to be.
No.
I think that's a good tie-in for that too.
Yeah, no, totally.
I don't know why we all do this too. It's like not life or death a lot of the times.
No.
And we just act like what we're doing is like it's like coming out from God's mouth that we must execute on whatever it is. And anything anybody else is doing is just not as important. And I think that comes out a lot on LinkedIn in a lot of ways. Like we're not the kings of the kingdom and the queens of the kingdom. No.
And I mean, even like there's probably amazing marketers out there that have some amazing product alignment. Together, they're like, I'm sure they're doing amazing stuff and kicking tons of ass and all of that. But like, if you couldn't do it, like it, I'm trying to, how do I articulate this? If you had a really rock star product and the worst marketer ever, people are still going to need your product. Like it might not be optimized, but you're going to get off the ground. But there's no amount of influencer stuff or like witty commentary that's gonna, elevate something that doesn't fill a business need. It's just never gonna happen. Like the dynamic favors.
You can manipulate people or trick people into buying it one time, and then you won't be able to again. Like at that point, no matter what kind of marketing you do. I have fallen for good marketing before, and I end up with a bad product, and I don't go off and continue using it. I just end it. Or throw it away or whatever it is.
Oh yeah, and then you have that whole like Yelp thing where like Yelp is all negative reviews because people don't want to talk about the good thing that they experienced. They only talking about, everyone's just going on there like, I can't believe this happened. Never buy from them. They're monsters.
Yeah. You just get the extremes.
Right.
People are passionate both ways. Occasionally you're lucky and maybe it's a very passionately happy individual, but I think we are more likely to be passionately mad and then go out there and tell people about that. But I do think that it doesn't matter how good your marketing it is. If the product isn't any good, you could get people one time maybe, and then it'll be over, and you can't build loyalty off of a bad product. Like that's it.
You can't. Yeah. And so like, I think that's a lot of, I guess I've always sort of done this in two directions. Like I'm always sort of advocating for someone that's maybe not lower on the hierarchy than me. Like design isn't like, it doesn't, I'm not trying to say that they're below marketing, but they're sometimes viewed that way. And I try to elevate them, but at the same time, like the product is like the whole thing. And it shouldn't be like, that's like a crime to say that, like, oh, the product team, like, is leading the charge. Like, well, they absolutely are. It's just the reality of the situation, and that's okay. Like that's fine.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Yeah, and so like I try to empower the design team and like my support staff to just do their best. Right. I don't need to meddle for them to like do well. Like, and so at the same time, I go to the product team, just like, help me to have that same relationship that I have with my support staff. How can I get out of your way in such a way that we're both really running at a high level? And, I think that it's like, people don't want to give away that ownership because then like, what did I do? But I think like a ton of marketing is almost like a project management and facilitative role. I think at the end of, at least in my experience, and I've never worked at like an e-com or in software, but I think the marketing function at the end of the day is like, how well do you get the team working on the same wavelength? Like, I feel like that's the thing that marketing does. And sometimes it's like literally the brand guide and making the fonts all the same and making everything kind of look uniform. But it's also like arranging buy-in, and you need to sort of get people's skin in the game a little bit, like on an equal footing. So that design and marketing feel good about it, and the sales team doesn't feel like they're getting slighted. Like they need to be catered to as well as the product team. And there's a whole lot of personalities and different competing, personal interests. And I think like a solid marketer looks at all of those variables and can kind of downplay their own role at the sake of the whole product overall being the whole product team working better together. That's typically been my approach. And that's to my own professional expense to some degree, because like I won't be like, well, this was a marketing led initiative. Like I'm never going to say that. It's not going to happen. But I just think that's the reality of the situation. I think that at the end of the day, like it's all like equally valuable, and it needs to all work together at the highest level. And maybe that's what I do. Maybe that's the part of tangible value that marketing is bringing in, is making all of those things work together.
I think that you couldn't have defined it better.
Maybe with less words, but
no, I think it needed to be done that way. But let's get tactical. You mentioned that during the COVID-19 lockdowns, you bet on yourself and you maybe didn't make a move before that because you feared rejection.
Totally.
How can others emulate what you did and allow more of their authenticity and their personality to come out, maybe online, or maybe it's actually at the job that they're in?
Yeah. I think I'm not sure. I mean, the first one is like, go for it. You're gonna like, and it took me forever to get there, but like retirement home you is gonna feel a lot worse if you hadn't tried than if you had tried and failed. Like you're gonna have more regret if you didn't even try. And I think that was taking a huge toll on my own, mental health at the time. I was just like, what am I doing? Like, and it was a struggle for me. Just to say like, it's fine if it doesn't work out. And it kind of didn't. Like it's on my LinkedIn. Like I wasn't at the job in between where I am now for that long. Like I wasn't awesome at it. I wasn't a great fit. And I found this, and it worked out for the best. Like, and I love where I'm at. Like Intelligence is fantastic. Everyone I work with is like awesome. But yeah, like it sucked for a little while, but like that's fine. And I don't know. I think it's a very privileged position to be in, where you're like, am I going to be professionally uncomfortable if I do this? Like, yeah, probably, but that's, there are worse things to be, you know what I mean? Like we're not risking that much probably, especially if you're someone like me that's going from like a marketing role to a marketing role. Like you want to sell all your possessions and be the next Banksy or something. Like, yeah, your kids might not be happy in the long run. That might not work super well. But I don't think most people think like that, right? Most people are thinking about, practical, functional moves, incremental value, adding incremental success and opportunity to their own sort of career. And so, yeah, it's worth taking the risk. The failure isn't that, it shouldn't be a deterrent. I think that, I learned a ton, at least about myself in my personal experience of putting myself out there. And, even just for like someone like you and on LinkedIn, for someone to be like, hey, that's kind of funny. Like that is like a huge boost, to feel like you and what you're saying is of some type of, value to someone. But yeah, so I don't know. So I'm getting like super wordy here. But yeah, take the shot, go for it. Don't let the risk paralyze you from the possible reward, which might also be small. The reward might not be this enormous thing, like, but it's, I think it's worth it. And then to be yourself, authentically online and in the workplace, I think A little bit of it is just basic humility, that you're not a huge, you're not a big deal. It's a team thing at the end of the day. Don't lose sight of that. And I think maybe one thing that people fall into the trap of is like they want to like, how do you get attention is a lot of times people will just like try to dunk on people or whatever, and they'll try to like punch down. Like I maybe don't do that. Like this podcast I think is doing that in a productive way. It's not saying like, it's not like the people of Walmart of LinkedIn, you know what I mean? Like that, it's taking it's like a conceptual thing. It's like, well, there's this like trope in LinkedIn, and it's more high-minded than that. And I think that's a lot more productive than being like, what's up with, hustle bros. And we're not like just dunking on that, which we could, because they're funny too. But,
yeah, there'd be plenty of material there.
Yeah.
But,
so I don't know. It just, humility is huge. I think it resonates with almost everyone that you would want to resonate with. And the people that are like, oh, like, look at this, this pushover or whatever, or you're like, what do they say? Like, oh, virtue signaling. Like, no, it's not a thing.
That has been a hot term. Yeah.
Yeah, that's not a real thing. People are just trying to go out there and not be jerks. I think that's okay. Good for them. But yeah, I think it's a mindset thing. Don't worry about it too much. I don't think a lot of negative can come out of a position of like sincerity and authenticity. I think that, it doesn't always work. Sometimes you got to play the game a little bit. I get it. There's compromises everywhere. But I think just keeping a low baseline is a smart move, professionally and personally. Just keep expectations kind of low. Try to keep a level playing field with the people you associate with, because that is the reality of the situation. You're all just people at the end of the day. So.
Yeah, we are coming up at the end of the show, but
Sure.
I've been asking everybody to do this fun challenge, which is to debunk an unpopular opinion. Do you have anything you would like to share here?
Yeah, I did a little homework for you.
I can't wait.
So I went into, and you actually posted something similar to this the other day about the search function in LinkedIn and how it sucks and doesn't work. So I threw in, excuse me, unpopular opinion into the search bar. My takedown of unpopular opinions is that they do not exist. They don't exist. The top, so past 30-day window, first degree connections of unpopular opinion. Data science is not recession proof. 186 engagements, 25 comments. Work-life balance is out. Work however much you want to. 790 engagements, 118 comments.
No way.
People don't care about your product. 54 engagements, 38 comments.
Is that unpopular at all? Who cares about anybody's product?
None of these are unpopular. TikTok is Gen Z Google. Wow. Bad days are inevitable. 56 engagements.
What?
Yeah. So I think my takeaway from that exercise and sort of like the framing in general, unpopular opinion, that's fine. But I think it would be more interesting if you had an unconventional opinion.
Oh, okay. I like that. Unconventional.
I think that might be because, like, why are you like, you're just trying to shine a light on a thing that's not there? Like, oh, hot take coming in. Like, nothing that follows that is ever a hot take. And I did it the other day, and it's not.
It's just a good lead, clicky bait thing to get people to continue, because they hope that maybe you're going to be controversial and they can fight with you. That's my theory on it. People want to fight.
It's silly. Yeah, have an unconventional stance on things. That's fine. But I mean, it's just completely, it's self-defeating. It's, if your opinion was that unpopular, then you'd probably keep it to yourself.
Yeah, well, I do have an actual unpopular opinion. That people know me for is I hate potatoes, and I have not met anybody else who hates potatoes, not in every form the way that I do.
Right.
And I have actually garnered like actual fights out of that. The fact that that can't be actually happening, that is the one food in the universe that everybody kind of likes. And I haven't found anybody, if anybody's on the podcast and they want to like companionship me on the fact that can I actually be the only one? I don't
It
know.
might be.
Maybe.
Yeah, I'll give you that. That is sort of, yeah. I think that meets the criteria. That is baffling.
Yeah,
I
I
really
couldn't. I don't know if I
couldn't
could talk about it for a half hour on an episode with anybody, but it would be funny.
We're gonna get together like the potato panel and talk
The
about why people hate
hashtag tater
potatoes.
hater. Yeah, but
Oh,
no,
that's funny.
I'm with you. It's
Yeah,
unconventional is probably a better way to put it than unpopular.
Yeah, or be unpopular if you're gonna do it. But like these are window dressings of unpopularity. Like that's not actually. Yeah, thinking that like water is gross would be like, I guess, or like potatoes are gross. Like I don't understand. You're wrong.
Hey, that's everybody tells me that. I'm
Right?
comfortable with it. I haven't liked them my entire life, not even
That's
as a
so
baby.
funny.
And
That
that
is so
might be
funny.
the most unpopular thing about me.
I don't think we're gonna take that down. I will search for it though. I will search for a more
Hey,
unpopular opinion.
help me out. Anybody want to contradict me? Like I'm fine with it. I want to make about people an opportunity if they want to
Oh,
go
yeah.
out and find more Pete. Where should they go?
Yeah, so yeah, I'm on LinkedIn a lot, obviously. Spending way too much time, perhaps. Yeah, at Pete DeOlympio, work for Intelligence. They've allowed me the unique opportunity to sort of sprinkle my worldview into a lot of our stuff. So check that out. I'm on Twitter. It's all just my name, so that's pretty easy. But yeah, love to talk with people and engage. And anyone wants to hit me up, they should feel free.
Well, make sure everybody on the show listening today is giving him a follow on LinkedIn. He's quite funny. At least I think he is. That's why I invited him on the podcast. I think he has a unique take to a lot of things, and he's funny and human. And I totally recommend following him on LinkedIn. I don't think I'll follow you on Twitter, but I will do that now too.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I would say that I'm more of a writer. I don't edit well in real time, as you may have noticed, but yeah, things will be a little bit more coherent on LinkedIn probably. But I tried my best. Hopefully
I'm not big on Twitter. I tweet occasionally, but they don't get a lot of engagement, and I don't know. I'm not as good at building relationships on Twitter, I don't think. Maybe that's probably why. LinkedIn, I'm good at it. On Twitter, I'm kind of like,
Yeah, I think I do. I don't know. I feel very uncomfortable with this. I feel like this is outside of my comfort space. I think that if I can see the words in front of me, I can be like, oh, like I can move that around. Like I think I approach it from a little bit more of that. But my ability to edit like off the top of my head is something I'll have to work on.
Well, I think that's okay. And then if you pay for Twitter, apparently you can edit your tweets now. I'm not going to do that, but
did they actually do it?
Well, you have to pay for it.
Unpopular opinion, just that guy.
Just delete your tweet and tweet it again like anybody else, okay?
What a nightmare.
Well, it was amazing having you on the show today, and I hope that you'll be back again.
It.
Thank you for your time.
All right, thanks, Ashley. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to Unpopular Opinion. This episode was produced by Audience Ops, a content-led growth agency. If you're looking for help launching a podcast, Audience Ops handles all the legwork, so you can focus on providing the subject matter expertise. If you enjoyed this episode, please follow Ashley's show on Spotify, Apple, or YouTube.